Virtual summits are the most powerful online marketing tool available to grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and create an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. If you are ready to take your summit to the next level, then tune into the Virtual Summit Podcast with Dr. Mark T. Wade.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark T. Wade, founder of Virtual Summit Software and creator of the One Day Summit Formula. And I'm on a mission to help you, the summit host, get your summit out to the world in a powerful and impactful way. So let's get started. Sometimes speakers can be a real pain in the rear. But instead of just throwing in the towel and giving up, let's talk about some expert tips for handling difficult speakers. This could be the difference between an impactful interview or a boring one. So let's get started. Hey there, Dr. Mark T. Wade here, founder of Virtual Summit Software and your host on the Virtual Summit Podcast. Now, you've heard me say the success of your summit depends on the impact of your interview. You may have also heard me say a good interview is in the hands of the host, not the speaker. But what about when a speaker isn't the best at being interviewed? Or what if you're just getting started doing interviews? What should you do? Well, first off, you should head over to the training called Interview Like a Pro and get access to full and impactful training on how to create professional and impactful interviews. Now, we cover that. We cover the perfect intro, how to prep like a pro, the summit story arc, and our complete interview flow. Plus, I give away several of my top resources for interviewing speakers. Now, you can check that out again at interviewlikeapro.com. It's a must-watch for every summit host hoping to create a successful summit. But I wanted to go a little deeper in one area today, and that's on a few tips when it comes to the interview. Because there are a few tricky situations that can occur when interviewing certain speakers. Maybe they're shy, or maybe they're an academic and they're not great at being interviewed, or maybe they're just difficult in general. Well, that doesn't have to equal a crappy interview. So let's cover some pro interview tips to help you in those difficult interview situations. So pro interview tips. Now, on to some of the fundamentals of a pro interview. There's a lot of aspects that go into this, and we're going to cover several of them right here so that you've at least heard them. In the end, it's important to just do your best with as many as you can. Okay, so some fundamental interview tips. It's always remember who you are serving. Act as if literally your audience is sitting right there with you listening in, because they are. This is for them. So you really need to take into consideration the information you're trying to pull out, and like that you're trying to pull out of your speaker, and don't be afraid to go head to head with that speaker to get that information. Because again, in the end of the day, at the end of the interview, if you don't get that information out and if it doesn't serve your audience, then it's not impactful and most likely it's boring. Now, you also want to make sure you try and make the speaker look like the expert. You want to make sure you're making them feel good, look good, seem good, because they're going to be more likely to give you everything they got when you make them feel like the expert. Another thing is you need to be present. I can't understand the people who do interviews while also answering emails or looking through Facebook. Be present. You have to listen with curiosity. That's the importance of an interview. You need to be thinking about diving deeper. What else do I not know about this? When they're giving you that information, put it through your thought process and understand, like, what about that do I not understand? Because if you don't understand it, your audience most likely doesn't understand it either. And if you're curious about it, you're going in there with an attitude of curiosity and an attitude of learning, trying to go more, not like, oh, I already know that. Great job, speaker. Move along. No. Your audience is going to sit there and go, oh, why didn't you ask them about that? Why didn't you go deeper there? They want you to go deep and to learn and listen with curiosity. So the other thing is, don't have silence or pauses. You need to be ready at all times, which is, again, another aspect of being present, that if your speaker stops, maybe they're thinking. This happens. You got to prepare for it. The speaker, the thinker, we'll call them.
Virtual Summit's software makes hosting a summit easier than ever. The only software in the world designed specifically for hosting a summit lets you set up a summit in a matter of hours with no tech skill or team needed. You can try out the Virtual Summit's software free at virtualsummits.com. But hurry, this is a limited offer.
The thinker, you ask them a question, they go, that's a good question. And then they pause for 5 seconds. You need to be able to jump in there and fill that gap, fill that silence. Yeah, speaker, I know it is a tough question, but maybe you could come at it from this aspect. Be like, yeah, okay, boom. And then they keep going. So minimize any kind of silence or pauses, because silence and pauses is an opportunity for the audience to jump out. They don't want to do, even if it's recorded, they have this barrier, this glue of respect and admiration, and they don't want to leave in the middle of it. But if you give them an opportunity, that's like, oh, this is where I can jump out. So no silence, no pauses. Also, you got to bring the energy. This is a pre-recorded session, right? So you can't sit there and engage it back and forth with the audience. You can't say, oh, hey, Sarah, thanks, where you come calling in from, or, Josh, we agree completely. You can't have that engagement in a pre-recorded interview. So you have to bring the energy. You have to be at a higher level of energy for that audience to feel it. So, you still be excited every interview, even if it's your 15th one in a row. And trust me, I've been there. It is difficult. It is hard. You do not, you're tired, but you still have to bring the energy. You still have to act excited. And that will also pour into your speaker. Your speaker will come back and match that energy, or at least elevate their energy to that. So find your next question. This is one of my favorite ones with interviewing. So we're against the 10 standard question format. I like it. You just don't love them. Now, I'm not saying you can't have some questions written down, especially if you've done your research. You may have questions written down. What I'm talking about is the 10 questions that are asked to every single speaker. No, every speaker is different. You should have different questions for each speaker. And with that being said, the next aspect is you don't need to have every question written out. You do need to have the questions you want to get into, the topics, the things, but find your next question in the answer to the last question. Again, find your next question in the answer to the last question. So go deeper, go further. You've asked a question, the speaker's answering it. Find something in that answer that you need to know more about. Go deeper into that. If in doubt, go deeper. Ask why, or tell me more. So if you're like, I don't know if that was a great reply, then go deeper. Okay, I don't know if that answered the question exactly, or my audience will get enough out of that, then go deeper. Ask why. Can you tell me more about that? Why is that important? Or why do you think that? Or why would that be something we should consider? Go deeper. Time management is another fundamental interview tip. You need to know what questions you'll eliminate if you go long, and you need to have extra if you go too short. So again, we're talking about having concepts or points of topics and things written down that you've researched in advance to go deep and ask your speaker. Now, some speakers are going to be longer talkers, though they're going to take longer to answer one question. So you may not get through all of the topics that you have written there. So you need to know which ones are a absolute must. I must ask this question, and which ones you're going to skip if you're running short on time. Opposite's true too. If you're like, oh my gosh, this speaker is answering every question with a one-word sentence or a one-word answer, then you're going to need more questions. So have some additional things that are at the bottom of your list that you're like, if I have time, I'd like to get his or her perspective on this, but it's not fundamental. It's not absolute. If we don't have time for it, no problem. And then review your work. Here's the deal. Most summit hosts and interviewers in general I've talked to don't actually listen to their interviews. I know your time's limited, and I know that you got a lot of interviews going on, but you got to review your work. How else are you going to get better if you don't actually listen to it and see where you could improve? I mean, every sports professional or even mediocre sports athletes out there review their play. They watch their videos. They watch the reels. They watch the teams. You got to watch your own reel, your own video here, your interviews. Go back and review your work. Remember, you are the host. You need to calm your nerves. Don't be jittery. Don't be nervous. Don't sit there and tell the speaker how excited and nervous. I'm so nervous. Like it's been a dream of mine forever to interview you. That's cool if you feel that way. Give them a compliment, but calm your nose. You calm your nerves. You are the host. Act like it. Like there's a phrase that my military buddies used to always say when somebody would get super excited or angsty. They'd say, "Hey, act like you've been here before. Like act like you've done this before." So remember, you're the host. Act like you've done this before. Even if you're interviewing your idol, your dream, whoever, give them a compliment, pay them respect, but don't oogle and ga all over them. Now let's move into some expert tips. Okay, these are going to get more advanced. These are a little bit more difficult. The other ones were fundamentals. Those should happen every time. Now, expert tips, okay, we're going to push the boundaries a little bit here, is ask the uncomfortable question. Yeah, I know, I said it. Like everybody's like, I don't like confrontation. I don't like conflict. I don't like to make anybody, and myself included, feel uncomfortable. I get it, but your audience, if you want your audience to love you and be engaged with your content and just want to consume everything you got, ask the uncomfortable question. Ask the thing that's on their mind that the speaker's not answering. Ask the question your audience wants to know. That's the important aspect of this. You need to be thinking about, what does my audience want to know? That's what I need to get into. That's what I'm discovering. That's what I'm finding out. And of course, you have to be different. Now, again, there's all kinds of ways to be different. Your content can be different. How you do your interviews can be different. You can add things into the interview that's more than just the back and forth, the questions and the answers. You can add a theme. You can add an activity that every speaker is drinking a wine when they're doing their interview with you, or every speaker has to create a poem or draw a painting or whatever it is. Be different. Be creative. Do something abnormal or unusual or funny, but be entertaining. Okay, don't just do the interview. Add some components to it that's going to, again, entertain the audience. They want to be entertained. Yes, they want to be informed. They want to be educated, but they want to be entertained. You can't just give education or information anymore. It's got to be edutainment, educational and entertaining. So do something abnormal. Look at your personality. What about your personality can you bring forward or shine through? If you're funny, be funny. If you're abrupt, be abrupt. If you like to do planned, organized activities, put that in there. It does not just have to be Q&A, information, questions, and answers, okay? Be entertaining. Create your story arc, okay? Set up your interview flows. We're going through that in depth in the Interview Like a Pro training series. Again, interviewlikeapro.com. We're going through in part 3, the Summit story arc. And then in part 4, the grand finale, we're covering how to the complete interview flow. Build that into it. Use the Summit storyboard template. Cover the importance, and then go deeper into this, okay? So we're going to make sure that we have the Summit story arc. That'll line out. That's an easy way. If you don't have a lot of experience with interviewing and creating interviews and questions and things like that, use the Summit story arc. That takes your audience from one place to the end by elevating them through this specific formula that we've created. So make sure you check that out. And again, that's specifically in the Interview Like a Pro training series.
Be sure to check out the speaker management tool inside your Virtual Summit software, which lets you quickly and easily recruit and manage your speakers on your virtual summit, literally eliminating hundreds of hours of work. Get more information at virtualsummits.com.
Now, what I want to do to kind of round out this interview is talk about, or round out this episode, is talk about some of the instances that are going to pop up. Look, if you do enough interviews, you're going to find some hard to handle speakers. It's just how it is, okay? So there's ways. We have some specific ways, and I'll cover some of the most important ones. You can use these same concepts to apply to all of your speakers in different scenarios, right? But you got to understand, one, you got to take control. You're the host. Act like it. Remember, the most important thing here is getting the information for your audience. You have to fight for your audience. Get the information for your audience. So let's cover a couple of the advanced or difficult situations when it comes to the speakers. So one is we call the kind interrupt, okay? So this is the speaker who's just rambling. They keep talking, like their answers are like 10 minutes long. You're like, I'm only going to get to one of my questions, right? You got to stop them from rambling and get them back on track. That is a part of your responsibility as a speaker, or excuse me, as the host, is to keep the speaker on track. So the kind interrupt, this is what we use. And it sounds something like this. The speaker's talking. I'm going to jump in right here because I don't want the audience to miss this blank. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring it back to that topic. So let's say you're talking about Facebook ads and the speaker's like, yeah, this Facebook ads into this, into that, into this other thing, into now I'm on Instagram, and boom. I'm going to jump in right here, Dr. Smith, because I don't want the audience to miss this point you just made. Reiterate the point, bring the speaker back on track. That's called the kind interrupt. Now, the go deeper. This is probably, so the kind interrupt is a very common one. You're going to have a lot of your speakers. I'd say probably 20 to 30% of your speakers are going to be talkers. They've done this a lot. They know the information. They can do 8-hour seminars. They can do 4-hour workshops. So the kind interrupt is going to be important to keep them on track in the little amount of time you have. But then you're going to have a subset of speakers that are not going to answer your question for a variety of reasons. One, maybe they don't know the answer. That could be a possibility. Two, maybe they don't want to actually say the information. Or three, maybe they're just kind of like, they're all over the place and they keep forgetting what the actual question was. That's usually the most likely thing, is they get to talking and they forget what the actual question was, so they just keep talking. So the go deeper is, that's a great answer, but why do you think that really is? So the point of this is to get the speaker to go deeper into that topic. So you can stop them and say, that's a great answer, but why do you think that really is? That gets them to keep talking about it. Or that's a great answer. Can you break that down for the audience to get them to lay that out? So you can use that to go deeper. The avoider, okay? So the deeper is like that surface level person. Actually, the go deeper is surface level, right? They're just like, they're not giving you deep stuff. They're just giving you easy answers, and that's not super great. Your audience is like, okay, that's common sense. Like, help me learn something new. So the go deeper is you got to get that person past, that speaker past the surface level and get them into a deeper answer to actually teach. Now, the avoider is what I was just mentioning. The avoider is the person who's like, like they don't actually answer your question. And again, it could be because they either don't know the answer, or most likely is they forgot the question, okay? But with the avoider, look, you are the host. You've got to fight for your audience. That means you got to ask the uncomfortable question, and it means you got to hold your speaker accountable to give that answer. So the avoider is the speaker who's not answering the question the way you want them to. And when I say that, I don't mean it's like you want them to say yes, they keep saying no. I mean, they're not actually answering the question. They skip over it, they jump around, they miss it. So one way you can attack that is you go, that makes sense, but can you tell me specifically why blank? So if you're asking them a question, so why do you think Facebook ads don't work anymore? And they're like, Facebook ads have this percentage, that percentage, this thing, but they never actually tell you why it's not working. So, that all makes sense. But can you tell me specifically why you've seen in the last month that these Facebook ads are not performing? So you can ask that over and over and over to get them to specifically answer that question. Now, to bring it back in, okay, this is another one of those, the speaker's just kind of going, okay? They're just going, or you're running out of time and you got to get to the point and get to the next question. So to bring it back in, let me stop you right there. Before we get into that, can you please clarify X and bring it back to this topic? So, or into the next question. So that's when you find them at they're transitioning to another thing. Let me stop you right there. Before we get into that, let's reclarify X. So maybe they didn't answer it, or they skipped past it, or they're just rambling and you want to bring them back on topic. This is the bring it back in. Now, the bring it home response is like letting your speaker know that, hey, we've only got a little bit amount of time here, so please keep these answers shorter so that we can get through the remaining aspects. So I usually will do this when I'm at about 15 to 20% left of my interview, okay? So if it's a 30-minute interview, when I'm at like about 10 minutes, 10 to 7 minutes left, I'll probably let them know. I want to give about 20% time there. So bring it home. So now as we start to wrap this up, I'd like to cover this point, or this last point if it's the last one. So you're essentially just letting them know, hey, we don't have a lot of time left. Please keep this short or simple. And this is the bring it home. So now as we start to wrap this up, let's cover this last point. And then the save a bombed interview. Okay, this is super important. Like when you save a bomb, the way to save a bombed interview. So let's say you've done everything perfect, you've done everything right, but it was just a bad interview. There's no way around it. The way you can still save your interview is you get the summary. At the end of the interview, at the end of the session, you do the summary. And this is your opportunity to make that interview still worth something. So the summary is for your audience. Okay, it's not for you, it's not for your host or for the speaker, it's for the audience. So this is your opportunity to either bring it all back in and make sense of all of the ramble, or if the speaker didn't cover anything, this is your opportunity to give your insights into that topic to still give them something to take away from that interview. So the summary is for your audience, and you can make the session end strong. Even if it was boring, even if it wasn't great, even if it was mixed, matched all over the place, at the end, you can save it with your summary. So a couple other important interview tips as we start to round out this episode. Questions should be right under the camera. So this is kind of like when you're doing this interview, these are, again, some advanced interview tips here. Like have your questions, don't have your questions on the table or somewhere off to the side where you're constantly looking down or looking away. You want your questions, if you have them written out, on your computer screen right underneath the camera, so you're always looking at or towards the camera when asking questions and or reading the information. There's nothing more distracting for a speaker than to see you looking down and away, as well as for your audience, okay? Now, again, this is why we use our speaker interview form that we have. Again, that's in the Interview Like a Pro training. You can grab that there. We fill all of it out and have it on our computer. If you mess up, okay, this happens. If you mess up, if you just bomb something, like you like completely butcher the speaker's name, or you accidentally slip in a curse word or whatever, just pause. Stop for a good 2 to 4 seconds so they'll see no audio there. That's a really good sign. If you're using an editor, they know to go in and look at that spot. So that's a good way for them to know where they need to do any edits. And then start over from the beginning of that phrase or that topic. Okay, so if you mess something up, pause, then start over from the beginning of that phrase or that topic. And then your editor can just clip that piece out and it'll be like you haven't missed a beat.
With the Ever Summit feature inside the Virtual Summit software, you can rerun your summit as if it were live, ongoing forever with one click of a button. This now lets you continue to use your summit forever, bringing in qualified and engaged leads every month into your business. Get more information at virtualsummit.com.
Make sure you practice your questions and your interviews. I know that sounds silly and you're like, Mark, I'm not going to practice my interviews. I'm going to be doing 30 of them. But you don't want your first interview to suck, okay? You don't want your first interview to be boring. Do a couple interviews with family, with friends, with yourself in front of the mirror. Practice. This is important. Please, please, please don't take it lightly. Make it important. Make it powerful. Make it impactful. Practice your questions. I can't tell you how many times I've written out questions, but then when I actually go to read them or go to say them, I've written them in a way that doesn't work with how I normally talk, and then I stumble over my words. Practice your questions. Get feedback with some of your practices or with your first couple interviews. Have a friend, have a colleague, have somebody watch them and give you feedback. And be open to that feedback, okay? Don't be defensive. They're just trying to help you. But they're going to tell you things like, oh, you always look down when you do this, or, you smack your lips against the mic and it creates the click noise or whatever. Just listen to what they say and take it on as feedback and improve. This is a refinement skill. Okay. So have a go-to follow-up in case something weird happens. Okay. Just have something that in your interviews, this is for all interviews. Like if something happens, you just have a go-to that you can do. If something weird happens, and I've actually just had this recently. Last week, I was doing an interview and I had a picture fall off the wall. Like a picture just fell off the wall. Now you may have a dog barking and it's going to distract you, and something is it's going to happen at some point in one of your interviews. There's going to be something that you weren't prepared for that's going to happen. It's going to distract you. So having a follow-up that you just go to, either written down or it, will help bring you back on track. So like just a question you're asking, it's not even in alignment with whatever, you just go to this, or, just something you can go to whenever something happens. Otherwise, you're going to sit there and you're going to be like, hang on, where were we? And you don't want to look like that. You want to look like a pro. So something weird happens. You're like, I don't know where I'm at. So what I was saying was something that gives you the opportunity to get back on track. Okay. Have that prepared. Paper and pen to write down notes. Okay. When we talked about earlier, when your question is in the answer to the previous question, you need to have something. They're going to be talking. Things are going to pop up. You want to write that down, because otherwise, if you're listening intently and with curiosity, like you should be, you'll forget what you were going to ask them. And then you'll be stumped. You'll be like, oh, I was going to ask you something. What was it? So have a pen and paper just to write a quick note about what it is you want to ask them more about, and you can come back to that. It's so important. Same background is ideal if you're doing interviews, especially, now you have with Zoom has a lot of great, kind of green screen backgrounds, but otherwise you want to have kind of the similar background, also wearing the same outfit, per day. Because think about it, your audience is going to be watching you like session 1, 2, 3, 4 on day one. If like one day you have one hat, or session 1 you have one hat, session 2 you have no hat, session 3 you're wearing a different shirt, they'll be like, what were you changing in between each of these interviews? Remember how they're going to be consuming this. Day 1, they're going to have these sessions. So have your outfits lined out, because your speakers, when you do the interviews, may not be in the order of the sessions, right? So this is also why you need to know what order your speakers are going to be in, which is where the storyboard template comes into impact or effect, and why it's important to write out your summit agenda. But have your outfits there. So speaker 1's on day 1. I got my day 1 outfit on. Interview number 2. Oh, that's on day 3. I got my day 3 outfit, etc. So the more this is how you take your interviews to the next level and make them professional. Additionally, always mute yourself when you're not speaking. Like, you'd be surprised how many things in the background that maybe you aren't even hearing anymore because it's been going on, and or random things that will happen. Just keep yourself muted at all times until it's time to talk. All right. Remember, the success of your summit depends on the impact of your interview. A summit is primarily just a series of interviews, and no one wants to watch 25 or 30 boring interviews. So when you get ready to interview your next speaker, get prepped and ready to create a professional and impactful interview. Get even more skills on this with our free training, Interview Like a Pro, and you can get that at interviewlikeapro.com. You'll be so glad you did. Plus, you'll get several of my top resources that I use on every interview. All right, thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening. Now don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on the Virtual Summit podcast. Head over to the show notes to check out all the links and resources from this episode, and be sure to grab your free trial of the Virtual Summit software.
Now, I want to end this episode by saying to all the Summit hosts listening right now, I believe in you, and you can do this. Summits are by far one of the most powerful ways to quickly grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and most importantly, make an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. So don't get caught up in analysis paralysis, because the world needs to hear your message, and there are people who are waiting for you to help them. So just get started, because imperfect action is always better than no action. Thank you, and see you on the next episode.